Hi, I'm Doug Tallman. I'm a reporter at Montgomery Community Media, and we're right here in our own newsroom talking with Josh Kurtz, the founder of Maryland Matters, a great website for state politics. Thanks for being here with us, Josh.
Thanks for inviting me on, Doug.
So we've got an election in just a short while,
Yeah.
and we've got a number of races to talk about. Let's start with the county executive race.
Okay.
This has got to have been one of the strangest county executive races on record, right?
Strangest and most unexpected, because everyone assumed the primary would end in late June and that would be the end of it. And yet here we have a kind of crazy competitive three-way general election. Nobody anticipated it. Least of all, I think, the Democratic and Republican nominees.
Right. So obviously, Nancy Florina has thrown a monkey wrench into this by running as an independent.
Yeah.
What kind of effect is that having on the parties?
Well, I think obviously it's scrambled everybody's calculations and everybody's path to victory. I think let's remember that Mark Elrich won his primary with just 29% of the vote, and it was a six-way primary, so you can't say he sort of had a mandate there. He just won by 79 votes or whatever it was. So there was definitely a pretty big segment of the Democratic electorate that was looking for something else. And Florine, I think Democrats in Montgomery County have a tendency to sort of come together at the end. There may be bitter feelings and long-lasting feuds, but in the end you expect them to come together. Florine has definitely thrown a wrench into that, and she has really kind of called into high relief the sort of divisions that have existed for a long time in this county and continue to, on just kind of the issues of development and the power and influence of the development industry in this county.
So would you say that this is going to be a referendum on development on November 6th?
I'm not sure. I think certainly if she wins, you could say that. I think if Elrich wins, I think it's as much about just sort of enough Democrats coming home and just kind of automatically clicking the D on the ticket and getting behind him. The county council obviously has just as much say on development, if not more so, and that's going to be kind of a mixed. The folks that are coming in are going to be kind of a mixed bag, I think, on development issues.
So how about Elrich's policies?
Yeah.
He's definitely seen as a far left of center type guy.
Right.
The whole county may be considered left of center.
I think so, yeah.
But he seems to have cleared a whole section of left of center all to his own.
Right.
So would it be more a referendum of Florine being more of a centrist and Elrich being more of want a better word, a leftist?
Yeah, I think to a degree. I mean, if you kind of look, if you kind of place them on an ideological spectrum, I mean, certainly Elrich would be to Florine's left, but how much, sort of in the broad national scheme of things? I mean, they probably, they both consider themselves liberal Democrats. I think, definitely on the issues of sort of economic development and in general, I mean, Florine has made it clear that she's going to be, she'll favor sort of aggressive development policies to kind of keep the tax coffers flowing. Elrich has made it clear that he's going to be a lot more skeptical about development, or at a minimum, demand more concessions from developers as they propose projects. So I mean, in that respect, I think voters will have a clear choice, but I think there's sort of other factors that will also determine the outcome.
So, and what role does Ficker play in all this? He seems to have had a lot more signs up before anybody else. Granted, yard signs don't vote, but it's amazing that you see them in almost every section of the county, and of course there's the Democratic worry was that Florine was going to split the vote and hand the election to Robin Ficker. So I mean, what role does he play other than the nominal Republican nominee?
Well, You know, I think people have a tendency to underestimate him, and people point out that when he ran for county executive in 2006 as an independent, he got, I believe, 9% of the vote. So some people are saying, well, you know, that's his ceiling. I don't think that's the case at all. I mean, I think you're going to have an elevated Republican vote in this county because Governor Hogan's going to do relatively well. And Ficker this time, thanks to public financing, has access to some money, you know, campaign funds, which he hasn't in the past. You know, is that enough to actually give him a chance of winning? I'm skeptical of that notion, but I could certainly see him pulling 20% or so, 25%. You know, there are a whole lot of factors going on. He's certainly, you know, he's in the mail, which he's never been before to any great degree. And as you said, he's got signs all over the place. So it's sort of Robin Ficker on steroids this time.
So do you want to go on a limb and say who's going to win?
I think Elrich is going to win. I'm not sure I would bet a huge amount of money on it, but I think, you know, just Democratic performance is such, and there's sort of enough institutional Democratic support behind him that he'll probably win. But, you know, Florine is on TV and in the mails, and she's attacking him aggressively, so she has some time to close that gap. I just think it's going to be tough for some voters to do anything but vote for the Democrat.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
But I'm prepared to be wrong.
Let's talk a little bit about David Trone and Amie Hoeber.
Yeah.
This has been kind of it's definitely on the Democratic side. It was definitely a hard-fought primary.
Yeah.
And now you've got essentially two millionaires battling it out for the 6th district seat. Two
millionaires who don't even live in the 6th district, I might add. Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, they're both Montgomery County millionaires, and of course, the district is in a substantial part of the county, but then it goes all the way out to the far reaches of Western Maryland. So it's, you know, a series of different electorates. But, you know, this is Hoeber's second go, so she's not a complete novice in the district. You know, she's known to some voters. And Trone, just by virtue of his last campaign in an adjoining district, plus his primary victory, plus all the money that's being spent, is also, I think, a known quantity. So voters certainly have an interesting choice here.
Now, granted, Trone ran in the 8th district 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Spent what, $12 million of his own money
in that neighborhood.
And came behind Jamie Raskin.
Right.
What is it about this time around that it looks like he has a path to victory?
Well, I think there are a few different things. I mean, I think, you know, it's the second time around for him as a candidate. That's, you know, that you're bound to improve as a candidate if you do it a second time, and that's definitely the case here. In the primary, there wasn't anyone who was sort of as beloved a figure on the Democratic left as Raskin was, so that enabled him to get through this primary with a decent margin. And you know, this is a district that's been drawn to favor the Democrats. By and large, even with Governor Hogan being popular everywhere, I think it's still going to be a Democratic year. So I think just, you know, sort of the fundamentals of the district favor Trone at this point.
He had a health scare just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
He's back on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's going to factor into anyone's mind, if they think that, I mean, if he must be slowing. He did miss at least 2 weeks of campaigning.
Yeah.
Right there in the heart of the race. So is that going to cost him anything?
I kind of doubt it. I mean, there are, you know, it's easy to sit on the sidelines when you're pumping millions into TV ads. So that's one thing. I think, you know, with an illness comes a certain degree of sympathy. So I think some voters will feel sympathetic toward him and sort of appreciate the fact that he's making an effort to be on the trail. Mm-hmm. You know, you could argue that his campaign was less than forthcoming about his condition when they were first asked about it. that's probably more, something insiders talk about. I'm not sure that kind of trickles down to average voters. Could the Hoeber campaign and her supporters make an issue out of that? Maybe, but I think the illness is probably a wash at this point, particularly if he's fully recovered and back out on the trail. And I know they have a couple of debates scheduled back to back, so and he'll be there.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. As much as the parties separate them, they're both they both come across as fairly centrist politicians.
Yes.
Aside from the fact that she would help a Republican majority in the House, do you think there's a whole lot of policy difference between the two?
I think certainly on sort of social policy, on the issue of kind of government spending. Trone is more of a conventional liberal, but I agree certainly in the context of where their two parties are nationally right now, they are both moderates. Hoeber, I just confused their names. Sorry about that. Hoeber, worked in the Reagan administration. I think is strong on kind of defense issues, but I mean, Donald Trump has kind of scrambled the political dynamic in so many ways, and so it's really even hard to kind of pinpoint where some of these folks are in that context.
Who do you think is going to win?
I think the fundamentals of the district and this cycle and the fact that he's spending so much money favor Trone.
Hogan and Jealous.
Yeah.
This has been a remarkable governor's race. What do you think about it?
It has been remarkable. It's been one of the most confounding things I've ever seen, and I'm still trying to figure out, why things have happened the way they've happened, and there'll be some interesting autopsies, I think, on this race when it's over. But Hogan came into this race with incredibly high approval ratings, and it looks like he's going straight to Election Day with those very same high approval ratings, in a Democratic state, in what is nationally probably going to be a pretty good cycle for Democrats. And it's just, astounding. He's proven to be just an incredibly effective campaigner.
And as he has been effective, has Jealous been ineffective?
Well, Jealous has definitely made some mistakes, and he's definitely made what I guess I'd call rookie mistakes because he's a first-time candidate. I think they've been magnified by the fact that he just doesn't have a lot of money to spend relative to Hogan. Jealous won a pretty substantial and impressive primary victory by 10 or 11 points, and then nobody heard from him for 2 months. I mean, he wasn't on the airwaves. As soon as the primary started, Hogan and the Republican Governors Committee were on the airwaves spending millions of dollars defining Jealous before he could define himself to most of the voters. And I think that's really been sort of the story, since the primary. So yeah, Jealous has made mistakes, but I think they wouldn't have seemed so big if they were operating on a relatively level playing field.
Is this Anthony Brown all over again?
Well, I mean, Jealous is a flawed candidate for a bunch of reasons. Brown was a flawed candidate for, I think, a different bunch of reasons. But I think, what are we taking out of this, assuming Hogan wins big? And I think he'll win pretty big. I think we can argue about, is it going to be 6 points, 8 points, 12, 15? I'm not entirely sure, but I do think Hogan is going to win. First, you just got to give credit to him. He's sort of found a sweet spot from which to govern and has convinced enough people, Democrats and Republicans, that he has their interests at heart, and he's sort of governing from the middle, and people seem to like that, even in blue Maryland. I think this also kind of reveals something that I've thought for quite a while, which is, Maryland is reliably Democratic in most races, but it's not, I don't think of it as particularly a progressive state, and we're sort of bearing that out. And even in the, Democratic strongholds, Hogan appears to be doing reasonably well. Montgomery, Prince George's, even Baltimore City, and I think that says something about the electorate too. There's sort of a lot of energy on the Democratic left, but there's still a lot of Democrats and independents and moderates who aren't there. And so that gave Hogan a lot of room to maneuver.
Hogan has said multiple times that he is trying to win Montgomery County.
Yeah.
Which seems like it takes a lot of nerve to say that you're going to win such a blue county in this state.
Yeah.
What do you think his chances are of pulling that off?
I don't know if he can win Montgomery County. I do think he will probably be the first Republican candidate for governor to clear 40% since Ellen Sauerbray in 1994. I think she got 41% here. No Republican has gotten more than 40 since then. Hogan got like 36.5% here in 2014. So I could see him getting up into the 40s somewhere. I mean, if he wins Montgomery County, man, we're looking at like a 20-point blowout on election night statewide. So it's something to think about.
Wow. Okay. So, and what could Jealous do in these final days of the campaign to change things for him?
Well, I've been struck by something. As we've seen, not surprisingly, we've seen newspapers endorse Hogan for re-election, the ones I've taken note of so far. But each one has made it a point to say, Jealous has very bold ideas. He talks about them sort of seriously and soberly. He's figured out a way to pay for them. If one of Jealous's best moments in this general election, I think, was during the debate when he kind of rolled out some of his ideas and basically said to the governor, "You don't have any ideas." And I mean, that's I think that's a legitimate point. If that's a point he can drive home, he would certainly at least get some, I think, Democrats to come back. But I think with just days left in the election, it's kind of tough to reverse the narrative, and not to mention the big spending gap between the two of them.
What do you think the voter turnout's going to be come this election, and what's your thought of, say, the voter mood?
In Montgomery County, and I think in Maryland, it's going to be pretty high. All the statistics nationally have shown that there's sort of record-breaking interest in this election for a midterm cycle, and I think the same is true here. Certainly, if you look at kind of like absentee ballots and stuff, applications and stuff like that, they're up a fair amount from 4 years ago. Democrats, since really the day Donald Trump got elected, Democrats have been kind of preparing for this moment, and I think there are sort of a lot of both sort of with the institutional party and with progressive groups. I think there's a lot of energy, but you're starting to see, since the Kavanaugh hearings, you're starting to see more energy on the Republican side too, and factor in Hogan's popularity, I think you're going to get a lot of Republicans voting. I have to believe that this is going to be there's going to be significantly more turnout than there was 4 years ago, which was sort of a kind of low and blah turnout election.
So if the turnout increases, I mean, we hear a lot about the blue wave that's going to take the country, but Maryland's already so blue that you kind of wonder, how is the blue wave going to affect a state like Maryland? Right.
Well, and then factor into that the fact that in all the public polls we've seen, Governor Hogan's been getting 30 to 35% of the Democratic vote. So I think there could well be a blue wave in Maryland. I don't think it's enough to save Ben Jealous. Hogan is very concerned about flipping 5 state Senate seats around the state, because that way the Democrats can't automatically override his vetoes. I think that's where sort of the blue wave may become a factor there, and maybe in some county races around the state, where, then it becomes a question, well, greater Democratic turnout versus Hogan coattails, and that's kind of the mystery to me, and that's what I think, why I think it makes it hard to call certain races, and why, I think we will wind up with some surprises on election night.
You said we won't wind up.
We will.
We will wind up with surprises.
I mean, not in like the gubernatorial race, but I think like if you look around the state in some key battleground races, you may see some surprises.
Okay. Any surprises in Montgomery County, do you think?
I tend to doubt it. I mean, if Hogan does really well, like pushes toward 50%, you might see some nervous Democrats in a couple of legislative districts. Even 4 years ago, he got in the high 40s in District 14 in the northeast part of the county, and District 15, sort of Potomac and a little bit of Up County. It looks like the Democratic incumbents are safe there, but I suppose if, Hogan's coattails are just at a record length, it's possible we could see some very close legislative races in those districts. I'd be surprised because the incumbents are pretty well established, but I mean, it's a crazy time politically, and nothing surprises me anymore.
Right, and let's see, 15's got at least one open seat, right?
Right, yeah.
And I guess that's where Republicans do their best, is on, at least around here, would be
right.
Open seats.
Yeah, absolutely, but, of course, remember, we have Montgomery County's not elected a Republican to any office since 2002, so that would be quite a reversal of that trend, and it would speak to I think Hogan's strength as much as anything, and maybe kind of the state of the county Democratic machine too.
And here we've got two old guys, and the topic is women in the election, in this supposedly the year of the woman. We're
right.
going to, at best, we're going to elect one woman to
the county council.
I believe there is one Republican woman running for,
right.
So we could theoretically have two,
right.
But it still seems like this has not been a stellar year for women candidates across the county.
Right, and remember too, in the Democratic primary, there was one woman candidate in the six-way race, Rose Krasnow, and she finished third with, 15, 16% of the vote. I think, being a woman is maybe one of the things that could, if we suddenly wake up after Election Day and Nancy Florine pulled an upset in the county executive race, is it possible that, a surge of women backing her was responsible? I mean, I think maybe. And, if you look at some of the legislative districts, there are, younger women that did win Democratic primaries who are, going to be important fixtures in the legislature and in the county's political scene for a while. But in general, yeah, it's really surprising. And of course, remember too that right now the state doesn't have any women in its congressional delegation, and unless there are a couple of Republican upsets on Election Day, that's going to remain the case.
Wow. So, what's the answer?
Well, I mean, I think the answer is always, you need more women to run, and the more who run, the more who will win. And I think that's certainly if you look at congressional races around the country, I mean, that's proving to be the case. I think there's some, I forget offhand what it is, but a very large number of the Democratic nominees are going to be, congressional nominees around the country are women, and that's going to result in more women in the next Congress. And that may be the case in the U.S. Senate too. So it's just, get out there, run, and take your chances, and more who run, the more who win.
Okay. So who? But as a Montgomery County voter,
yeah.
You would think that this would be the area where we would have,
I know.
a 50% woman on the council. We'd have 50% on our legislative, our Annapolis delegation.
Yeah.
We've got, 3 congressional districts represented in this county. You figure one of them would be a woman. you kind of wonder what went wrong.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I'd say what went wrong, but it's certainly like what happened at any rate. And I think, you know, it's there. What can you say? Politics is still sort of a patriarchal system, and that's slowly being chipped away, but not fast enough. And you know, it's interesting too because, like, you know, Prince George's County is going to get its first woman county executive this year, and Baltimore has had 3 straight women mayors, and you know, so why are we lagging behind in Montgomery County? I don't know. It's an interesting question. There are probably others more qualified to address it than we are, but it's an interesting question.
You don't want to take a stab at it?
No, I mean, I think, you know, I mean, politics is cyclical to a degree. Politics is situational. You know, people are always looking for opportunities, you know, men and women, and probably, you know, I'm sure. Well, let's also remember that, I mean, the county council at large race, there are plenty of women running in a humongous field, but I think, you know, the top woman finisher was 5th, maybe, or, you know, obviously the first 4 place finishers were men. I mean, you know, just there were weird dynamics in that race and in some others. I'm surprised more women didn't run, but you know, if you look at some legislative races, you know, women had some success in them, but it's still interesting, puzzling. But you know, I'm always puzzled by some stuff in the Montgomery County political scene. So this is one of this year's, you know, questions, I guess.
So Montgomery County is the most diverse county, I believe, in the state. And yet, do we think, is it reasonable to think that the candidates that are representing the county are the most diverse representatives?
Well, you know, it's a very good question, and it's something I've thought about a lot and written about a lot, really, for 20 years now. And I think the short answer is we're getting there. We're not nearly where we ought to be. But, you know, if you assume like the county council elections are going to go the way we think they are, I think we're going to have 4 of the 9 members will be people of color. So, I mean, you could say that's progress. I think our legislative delegation is slowly getting more diverse. But it's interesting because I've written this before, but you know, in Annapolis and around the state, a lot of people still think Montgomery County is sort of, the streets are paved with gold here, and you know, until our legislative delegation really reflects the diversity in the county, it's going to hamper Montgomery County's efforts to, you know, get the recognition that there are, you know, some serious pockets of poverty and some serious legitimate needs here. And, you know, if we keep sending what I like to call, you know, suburban white kids to the legislature, when that's not really what our county is about at this stage. Mm-hmm. So it's an interesting conundrum, but we're definitely getting better, just not where we need to be.
And how much of that can be resolved with political redistricting?
You know, that's an interesting question too. You know, we have. It's been a while since I've looked at the numbers. I know that District 20 down in Tacoma Park, Silver Spring is majority minority. I think District 14 in the northeast part of the county is awfully close too. You know, is that a desirable thing to draw more diverse districts? Is it even possible in the context of redistricting? I'm not sure, but you know, it's something worth discussing the next time redistricting comes around.
Thank you, Josh Kurtz from Maryland Matters, and thank you for watching. For more information, check out our website at mymcmedia.org or Josh's website, marylandmatters.org. And don't forget to vote. Election Day is November 6th.